is born out of the need of these different stakeholders. And this is really going to be the kind of evolution for this platform, because it has to continuously respond to the pain points of the different stakeholders and adapt itself as it goes.
Mr. Narayan, this is Asit from the Economic Times. So I just wanted to know the expected intraday turnover of Emerge, and where do you see this number after 1 year?
The turnover will be definitely modest, and in fact, in a sense, this is the key answer to why it's a platform and not a separate company. This is very, very important. It is unlikely that this area can be a revenue earner for an exchange, but the importance is so high. You've seen that in our country, so that is really key. The other question that perhaps didn't get answered about AIM, I think you also wanted to know the difference in AIM. AIM is not focused on the really small companies that we are talking about. Okay? And second, there was some amount of regulatory arbitrage on the AIM platform. So they actually had diluted regulatory requirements. Whereas here, if you notice, SEBI has chosen not to dilute the regulatory requirement because they have their own challenges, their own repercussions if you dilute. Okay.
That is where I just want to ask. When you look at the AIM model, the purpose is that the AIM as an exchange is also, the SME part is also a revenue generator, and it is done in purely commercial sense of the scheme. But here, the India model that you are looking at, it need not necessarily result in good revenue streams for the exchange. Today.
This is about revenue streams of tomorrow.
Yeah. So my question is that are you looking this activity as a pure revenue stream, or you are just looking at it as some form of a CSR role of an exchange?
No, it is certainly not CSR, but it's certainly not driven by strong revenue flows. I cannot imagine that. Frankly, both SME issues as well as the corporate bond issue will not be strong revenue drivers. At the same time, the exchanges must keep a very central focus in both these areas. These are the long-term needs. Same thing, no? Corporate bond is raising a kind of fixed income capital for corporate India. SMEs is about the hard part of. Remember, even today, SMEs even find it difficult to get credit, right? And we are actually one step ahead. We're talking about risk capital, equity risk capital. So it is a challenge, and therefore we have to be slow and deliberate about it, and it will succeed as long as we keep that in mind firmly.
So we already have a BSE SME exchange. How this NSE exchange will be different from
Well, several ways. One is the feedback we got from the entire ecosystem, and you saw that we spent a lot more time figuring out what we need to do. One feedback we consistently got was that investors didn't know these companies. They didn't understand these companies. So investing community needed a little bit of help in understanding it. And they said, can you do something so that our confidence in investing in these companies improves? So we brought up two voluntary pieces which are not part of SEBI requirements. One is a voluntary rating. The second is a voluntary due diligence, which the companies have agreed with our encouragement to do on their own. Why is this? This is a piece of confidence. Okay. Third, we are looking at companies that have been preceded by some amount of institutional risk capital. The venture capital funds, the small PE funds. Why? Because as you know, they do enormous due diligence before they invest. Again, what is this all about? It's a little signal of confidence for the investor that a lot of research has gone. This is not a fly-by-night company. We must avoid fly-by-night companies. Okay? And fourth, we are giving them a choice of a continuous market as well as a call option market. This is another innovation. So we brought 3 or 4 innovations which we think are very important to develop and strengthen this market.
So some companies who want to invest in the NSE SME platform need to have a compulsory rating and need to mandatorily have some kind of a PE investment in them?
No, we're not saying that, but we will certainly be providing, as we said, strong hand-holding support, and as Chitra said a moment ago, make sure that we meet the needs and aspirations of all stakeholders. Right? One side of stakeholder is the company raising capital. The other sides are those who will be investing, and the third side are those who invested and will need exit. See, ultimately, feedback is don't just list, build the ecosystem. It's a slow process, but it will work this time.
So you encourage companies to go in for rating, but it's
Yes.
not a necessary thing.
It's very helpful. Companies recognize, you heard Tejo, right? It is helping the companies, it is helping the investors.
Look at it this way, it's a small issue, and you have to be heard amongst all the clutter that will come into the market. What is the way you will be heard? If you have a 5 out of a 5 rating, for example, surely you will be heard. If you have institutional investors, you will be heard. So it's about really improving the chances and communicating in a more clear-cut way about who you are and what you are as a company. To the investors who will then be more than willing to invest.
But how many of the 3.11 crore companies that we're talking about will actually have a PE?
It's all right. It's all right. Okay. We have to be careful this time. The first flush of companies must instill confidence in what the platform. Once it does that, then people will look at each other to see what succeeds. What is the successful attributes of this model? If we rush it, we will again fail. India can't afford to fail with this. It's too long.
For example, in this case, there is no PE investment. But the fact that there are nominated investors, that's a sort of a seal of confidence that comes out, isn't it?
So what is the most important lesson that the exchange has learned when compared to your previous efforts to build such a platform?
Remember that for the SME platform, this is our first platform. When I say earlier efforts, I mean India's efforts. So I was referring, of course, to OTCI, which very frankly was somewhat ahead of its time. It had very brilliant ideas, but it was ahead of its time. So for NSE, of course, this is our first formal platform. But there are many lessons, but the one key lesson is build on the entire ecosystem of participants who are important to an SME in raising this capital. Right?
And the second question, sir, for an SME to appreciate the nuance of the choice between continuous trading and the call option. So do you think an SME in India is better placed to make that choice?
It's all about hand-holding that process. They have to understand the pros and cons.
Why leave the choice to him? Why can't the regulator and the exchanges insist that anybody who comes on the SME platform will have to go through the call option?
Well, one could, but then the sense in India call option is happening for the first time, or will happen for other. Even if you look at the experience of pre-open, that's one form of call option. It's not been a resounding success for reasons completely different from the call option model, right? So why do something which will force tomorrow's budding entrepreneurs to say, this is sounding a little uncomfortable for me? Give them options.
Ultimately, the market intermediaries, the merchant bankers, the companies together, they take these kind of decisions, because who is the one who's going to hold out on the market making obligation? It's really the market intermediaries. So it's really only about choices. Ultimately, the market maker has to be comfortable, whichever the model is. So company will take advice of all of these when we come to that kind of decision.
So this platform market making will be compulsory.
Market making is compulsory by SEBI. That is a must. That's the must. But market making can be subsumed both in the continuous market and in the call option market. That part is not wrong. That part is not wrong.
One last question. How is this model different from the nomad of AIM?
Look, it's not so much the nomad piece is similar. The problem, as I said, is the AIM companies were first of all not the kind of small companies where India's budding entrepreneurism lies, number one. Number two, they had diluted regulatory framework for AIM, for the companies coming in. They diluted regulation. And in fact, if you
From the governance aspect or from the...
all kinds of aspects. If you go back and Google it, you will find that they ultimately it proved to be a challenge and they have to relook at the regulatory dimension. This is something that India is not very keen to do. This is something that SEBI is not very keen on.
A slightly different question. Could you just talk about your financial literacy drive that you have and the tie-up with various stakeholders?
Sure. Before we launch on it, there's just a couple of more things that probably is helpful to highlight. The one other thing that we've done around the SME is also to put sort of put out the research reports on that company on a quarterly basis. This will be available on the website for everybody. Our experience on research reports for the main board was really a resounding success. People were very, very appreciative of the research reports on the main board companies, because as you know, more than a few hundred companies don't really get tracked even on the main board today. So out of the 1,500 plus companies that are there, there's very little available for an investor to really look at and quickly understand about a company beyond the top few hundred. So that gave us, in any case, research reports would have been something that we would have done for the SME segment Emerge platform. But the experience of the main board only reiterated and sort of reaffirmed our commitment to go ahead and do this for the small board.
So just remember, a company like an Infosys or a State Bank of India has automatically 30, 40 analysts following that company and putting out quarterly reports. The SME type of company has 0 analysts. Who's going to follow it on their own? So if they don't follow it and they don't put out research report, which investor will have that confidence? So NSE is going to get on its own. That is it.
And the other point which John also mentioned in the remarks that he made. See, ultimately it is about what is this SME segment we are talking about? This is not an also ran segment. This is a segment that truly is the stars of tomorrow. And if they were to come out on the main board today or one year hence or 2 years hence, they would probably do that migration anyway. But coming through the Emerge platform helps them feel their way through the market, through the meeting the expectations of different stakeholders. It provides that hand-holding, it provides the visibility to that company, so that when they actually migrate to the main board, they are already a very well understood and a very well tracked asset. And that's really the main aspiration for the Emerge platform. The Emerge platform ultimately, the reason MD also sort of didn't come back with the numbers or 31 lakhs is fine. But at the end of the day, what do you want to say? That if it is on the Emerge platform, this is an asset that I can close my eyes and invest in. That is really what one should endeavor to build, so that we are positioning it as very clearly the future of markets.
I am suddenly reminded of something. Does anybody in this room remember that the Infosys issue when it came out at the start, when it was undersubscribed, and for years it traded below par? I don't know if any of you remember that. I still do. It was undersubscribed. Had Emerged in that, Infosys wouldn't have gone on the main platform. It would have come on the Emerge. I rest my case. Yep. That's exactly what I'm saying. Infosys did not belong on the main board at that time, but there was no Emerge. Now there is an Emerge. Undersubscribed. Simply language. Nobody traded it.
Hi, sir.
There is a set of regulations that SEBI has put in place for SME boards or SME platforms. Now, as far as the exchange rules and regulations are concerned, have you, been more liberal when compared to the SEBI norms in terms of the listing requirements, or have you just followed what SEBI has put in place? In terms of, say, the turnover limit or the other criteria which you look at before taking an SME on board?
No. SEBI requirements are sacrosanct. So those are what they are.
Correct, but are there any turnover, will you look at taking any SME even with 10 crore turnover or 20 crore, or is there a particular turnover limit that you?
No. Whatever the SEBI requirements are, as long as they fit in those requirements, we are.
But beyond that, certainly in all our engagement, then what's really emerged as profile of companies that we would follow. We've looked at track record of companies, profitability of companies, the governance that's already in existence on those companies, the approach of management to broad base, and and last but not the least, we've clearly stayed looking at SMEs in the real sector. So these are all, in some sense, our sort of path to bringing in the companies. The universe is huge. You could really pick from any.
Can I just close this issue by saying one thing? There are SMEs and there are SMEs. Okay, the parameters that are there, ultimately any set of parameters have to be very objective, right? So those parameters are there. But as I said, I keep saying is the ecosystem feedback is try to ensure somehow that quality issuance comes on Emerge. It's very, very important. Now, what is that parameter? There's no quality parameter, right? So one keeps trying to suss out, do hand-holding, make sure that this is another company with a vote of confidence.
Can you just Damia's question?
Yeah, sorry, we don't need to, provide short script, but just SME is the flavor of the topic.
At this moment.
Yes, go ahead.
Ramya, who wanted to ask them?
No, she asked. We haven't responded.
So on financial literacy, we've taken several initiatives as we're already on stream in one state and in talks with a couple of other states. We've also worked with some of the universities in a couple of other states at the college level, school level, college level, as well as at the graduation level. In some of these, it's part of the government's curriculum and therefore it becomes a mandatory subject and so on. But in some of the other cases, they've actually taken it on voluntarily as an additional, sort of a subject which they will do because it improves the employability of their, students as they go out. It's still very early days to say, what we should be doing differently. But response to the program per se has been very, very encouraging. In fact, you would also notice that some efforts